This is TWiT.
So, Exchange server, once again, under attack. A Vietnamese group named GTSC discovered an active, in-the-wild Exchange server 0-day. And let me just preface all of this by saying this is very bad. I mean, this is... okay, here's what they said. At the beginning of August 2022, while doing security monitoring and incident response services, GTSC SOC, that's their Security Operations Center, team, discovered that a critical infrastructure was being attacked, specifically to their Microsoft Exchange application. During the investigation, BTSC Blue Team experts determining that the attack utilized, and this is a translation from Vietnamese, so bear with, but it's pretty good. Determining that the attack utilized an unpublished Exchange server vulnerability, i.e. a 0-day vulnerability, immediately came up with a temporary containment plan. At the same time, Red Team experts started researching and debugging Exchange decompiled code to find the vulnerability and exploit code. Thanks to experience finding the previous 1-day Exchange exploit, the Red Team has a great understanding of Exchange's code flows and processing mechanisms. Therefore, research time was reduced and the vulnerability was uncovered quickly. The vulnerability turns out to be so critical that it allows the attacker to do a remote code execution on the compromised system. GTSC submitted the vulnerability to the 0-day initiative, ZDI, right away to work with Microsoft so that a patch could be prepared as soon as possible. ZDI verified and acknowledged 2 bugs whose CVSS scores are 8.8 and 6.3 respectively. Again, the beginning of August 2022. We are now 2 months downstream, right? August, September, we're in October. This has not actually been fixed yet. Since this was reported, GTSC said that they've encountered other customers who they're also charged with monitoring, whose infrastructures they're keeping an eye on, also experiencing a similar trouble. And after careful testing, they confirmed that those other systems were being attacked using the same 0-day vulnerability. To help the Exchange server community temporarily stop the attack until an official patch is available from Microsoft, they published their coverage of their findings while responsibly excluding the information needed to recreate the attack. The exploits cause Exchange server to download a malicious DLL whose code is then injected into the always present and busy service host.exe process in Windows. Once that's done, the DLL is started and it phones home to the machine at the IP address 137.184.67.33. I imagine that changes from instance to instance, DLL instance to DLL. A simple and effective RC4 cipher is used with a key chosen at runtime to then encrypt the communications back to the command and control server. The GTSC folks also explained. They said, while providing SOC service to a customer, GTSC Blue Team detected exploit requests in IIS logs with the same format as the proxy shell vulnerability. And in fact, this is now, I just saw this. I wanted to check just before the podcast to make sure that I hadn't missed any updates, like Microsoft had just patched or just pushed an update, but there's still nothing from Microsoft. This is being called informally proxy not shell vulnerability instead of the proxy shell vulnerability, because it is definitely a variation on that theme. In the show notes, for what it's worth, I share an example of the URL that is in there. They said, checking other logs, we saw that the attacker can execute commands on the attacked system. The version number of these Exchange servers showed that they were already running with the latest update. So an exploitation using the actual proxy shell vulnerability was impossible. Thus, the Blue Team analysts confirmed that this was a new zero-day remote code execution vulnerability under active exploitation. So I've got links in the show notes. There are indications of compromise published and available if anyone wants to make sure their Exchange server instance hasn't already been made a victim. And there are mitigation steps that can be taken. Last Thursday, Microsoft publicly acknowledged the trouble with their own posting titled Customer Guidance for Reported Zero-Day Vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange Server. I've got a link in the show notes. The trouble is, the mitigation which was first proposed by the GTSC people appears to be what Microsoft has copied and is echoing. It recommends basically adding a pattern-matching rewrite rule to the IIS web server which hosts Exchange. But in an update from GTSC just yesterday, October 3rd, they noted, and they said, quote, after receiving information from Jang, whose Twitter handle is testannull, they said, we noticed that the regex used in the rewrite rule could be bypassed. And they then link to a YouTube demo. So I read that to mean that Microsoft's official proposed mitigation can be bypassed. And in fact, there is an article just posted from Bleeping Computer confirming that Microsoft's mitigation of this the zero-day remote code execution vulnerability for Exchange Server can be bypassed. So things are really not good. Let's hope that Microsoft gets a permanent fix for this problem published soon and that all Exchange Server users jump on getting their systems updated. I don't know of anything else that we could do in the meantime, except I can take a sip of water, Leo, since my throat's a little scratchy.
That's a good thing to do. In the